In November, I switched my SIM card from my iPhone to an old flip phone that my grandma used to use. There's nothing fancy about this phone. It's literally valued at $40 on Amazon. And yet, I can honestly say that this was one of the best decisions I've ever made. In this video, I want to tell you why I did it and why I felt like it was absolutely necessary for me to make such a drastic change. If you're interested in hearing about how exactly my life changed after I made the switch, I have published my journal entries on my Substack, so I'll link that below. I do want to mention that in addition to switching to a flip phone, I've also found a way to block social media websites on my computer. And I've made several videos about it because I find that the web version of social media apps is just as addicting as the mobile version, so I needed a way to restrict both. Now let's get into the reasons. So the first thing was just a constant dissatisfaction with how much time I was wasting on social media. And, this was going on for over a year. There would be days where after work, I just spend 2 hours watching short form content and my entire evening would be gone and it would just be time to eat and then go to sleep. And I wouldn't even be consuming anything specific. And even when there were videos that were kind of like a bit longer and the person actually had a point to say, I would scroll past those because I wasn't even seeking out information. Like there was nothing that I was getting out of this. I was just kind of like scrolling in a hypnotic state because I was tired after work and this was like the easy thing to do. And somehow, even if I tried to read an article or something, then the second that my attention wavered, I would just like type in YouTube or Instagram and then I was done. It just took one click for me to go down the wormhole. And I truly felt like I was entering an altered state. It would sometimes be hard to pull away. Like I'd just be laying on the couch so comfortable. It'd be hard to detach from the screen. And I actually found that there is research that supports the idea that your brain enters an altered state. This Substack article summarizes it pretty well. Within 30 seconds of watching television, the subject's brainwaves shifted. They moved from predominantly beta waves, the pattern associated with alert, focused, analytical thinking, to predominantly alpha theta waves. Alpha is the brainwave state associated with relaxation and dreaming. Theta is even deeper, the state your brain enters just before sleep, during hypnosis or in deep meditation. So you literally have 30 seconds before watching content alters your brainwaves, and that perfectly explained how I was feeling all of those nights when I would just like lose track of time. The mounting list of things that I need to do and things that I want to do would just keep getting pushed over to the next day where it was like unmanageable and I could never get to the things that actually gave me pleasure because all of my time was running out and I'd just been wasting it. So I had a realization that this is something that's really hard to resist. It's something that affects me at a level that's much deeper than just the surface. And all of the things that I tried to do using my own willpower were never enough. Like I would keep my phone in another room and that was good, but it was just too easy to, slip up, bring it into the other rooms, and then I just find myself sitting on the couch with it. Or like I deleted social media apps off my phone, but then I just spend as much time looking at them on the computer. And even when I stripped my iPhone down into like the bare necessities, I would still find myself spending more time than I was happy with on it. Like my screen time was still 2 hours, inching up to 3 hours because I would just open the browser randomly and like every thought that I had, whenever there was some unknown, I would immediately just reach for the browser and I would look up the information that I was missing. So overall, I spent over a year trying to reduce my screen time and it was always a battle. Like putting rules over my phone always felt like I had to abide by these rules. It's like trying to be on a diet and then, you have a pantry full of foods that you would love to eat. It's hard. So when I started to just block things, like when I created my Python script that just blocks social media websites on my computer, that was the answer for me. That was the only thing that really like helped me solve the problem. By just removing the problem, and like that was the thing that was most effective. And I do want to say that before I switched to a flip phone, I was using the brick device, which is a magnet that you scan and it automatically blocks certain apps that you designate. And that was actually very helpful. Like you can set custom schedules. So automatically at a certain time of the day, these apps would just lock up and then you couldn't unblock them unless you went to your fridge and you scanned this magnet, which creates enough friction where you just end up not doing it, right? Like if you're cozy in bed, you're not going to go down to the fridge and scan this magnet. So having that like very aggressive setup on the brick actually did help me a lot, and it turned my phone into a dumb phone. I felt so much better. I was taking in so much more of my environment, and I didn't feel as much of an urge to pull it out because I didn't have much in there to look at. But yet something in me just desired even more. Like, why do I even have a smartphone when I don't want to be using it? Like, I wanted to keep my phone restricted at all times with these aggressive schedules. And, still having my smartphone there as my primary phone, it felt like I had a mirror to like anything in the world that I desired. And I was just putting tape over it so I can only see a little bit of it. It still felt like I had this crazy tool in my power, and I was just, it felt silly. It felt silly to be trying to cover it up. Like, if I wanted to, if I knew that this was my answer, if I knew that the best thing that was helping me most was living with it in such a limited state, then why not just go the full mile? And on top of that, my smartphone was already really messed up. Like, my camera stopped working, and it was an iPhone SE from, I think it was 2016 or maybe 2020. But it was a really old model, and the battery sucked. Like, it needed to be plugged into life support for the majority of the day, and I'd have to go out with a power brick anyway. So like, my phone wasn't even good. The other big influence on me was the artist, writer, and activist August Lamb, who has a lot of articles about living without a smartphone and why having a smartphone is not necessary. And I read so much of her work, like pretty much everything that I could find on Google search with her name, I read it because I was just so enamored with the ideas that she was sharing. It really made me feel like, whoa, like this is actually doable. Here's somebody that's actually doing it. Like, I thought it was too late. I thought society has gone too far in the digital direction for this to be possible, but through her sharing her experience, I was able to see that it's not the case. People can still live and thrive with less technology. And one of the things that she spoke about when she talked about what her life was like with a very limited flip phone was that she talked about how much free time she had. And that really resonated with me because I always felt like I just don't have enough time. Like, my whole life just felt like waking up, going to work, and then doing house stuff, and then having to go back to sleep and repeating that cycle. And my weekends never felt like they were enough. So if getting rid of my smartphone would help me get back more time, and I knew that it would. I knew that it would because even with all the restrictions that I was imposing on it, my screen time was still 2 hours. That's 2 hours of my time that I could be spending, learning a new recipe or reading a book or working on my projects, which is what I'm doing now that I don't have a smartphone. I produced 4 YouTube videos already. This is my 5th one that I'm recording. I wrote articles. Like, I'm actually working on my creative aspirations for the first time in such magnitude. So feeling like I didn't have enough time in my day was a huge motivator for me to move to the flip phone. So since I was already in the headspace where I was trying to restrict my phone usage and I was thinking about downgrading, I had remembered this YouTube video that was circulating a few years ago that was semi-viral, and it was about this group of teenagers that started this club called the Luddite Club, where they would get together and they would do offline activities, and they all had flip phones. And so I looked that up again, and I was reading some of the posts related to that, and it just made me question why I'm not just going for it, why I'm too scared to try something that I could easily go back from. Changing to a flip phone was not an irrevocable decision. I could always try it and go back. So seeing those teens be so brave and be so loud, I was just bothered by the fact that I wasn't brave enough to try it. And then on top of that, as I was looking at this content from these Luddite teens, I did find a podcast about a protest that they had done in New York City. And I listened to the recording of that podcast, and I realized that this is not just about me. It's not just about saving my screen time and having a better life for myself, which I did believe it would do, but it's also a bigger message. It's also a bigger social message to choose this resistance against these algorithms that were trying to pretty much eat us alive and get us as hooked as possible to their sites. And listening to that podcast and just hearing like that, there were people on the street that were encouraging them and like resonated with the message. really made me feel like there's a unity in this that I wanted to be part of. Like, I agree. And there's a lot of people that agree. Like, I want to be part of that resistance. And I was seeing all of these horrifying statistics that were showing how much of your life you spend behind a screen if you have a certain screen time. So, if you have 7.8 hours of average screen time per day, that's 34 years of your life staring at a screen, which is horrifying. And I felt like my number was even worse because I work at a desk job, so most of my day is staring at a screen for work. And then after that, I use my personal laptop and then I use my phone. I just knew that my number was even worse. So I decided to do my own calculation and find out how much of my time I'm spending behind a screen. And when I did the math for myself with like an average of 6 hours of screen time for work, and then I factored in personal device screen time, and I was even being nice and I made it less on the weekends. But the number that I got after those calculations was that I spend 14 full waking days per month on a screen. And if you think about that in terms of months of a year, which was crazy. I mean, at that point, like, it's over. Most of my life is just a screen. I'm not a human living in this world anymore, you know? That's really what it felt like, doing the math and having to look at that number. It made me feel like, why am I shortening my lifespan so much? Like, why am I only spending 5 hours per day being human and experiencing life, and then the rest of it I'm just stuck behind a screen, eroding my body and eroding my mind because I'm not looking at anything that's actually going to benefit me for the most part. And since my personal calculation came out to almost 6 months of a year spent behind a screen for the waking hours, it's like splitting my life in half of it being actually spent on the earth and half of it just lost and gone to the web. And then from there, I really just started having this unnerving image of myself on my deathbed and recounting my life and realizing that I don't remember a lot of it because a lot of it was spent behind a screen. And I didn't want to be at the end of my life, look back, and then think about how there was a point where I considered making a change. Like, I considered living differently. And then I'd have to remember never taking that choice, never being brave enough to try something else. And I just didn't want to get to the end of my life and have that be what happened. So I'm going to leave off the video here. If you're someone who's considering switching to a flip phone or downgrading in any capacity, or just someone who's trying to limit their screen time, then I highly encourage you to try it. There's many ways to do this that can adapt to your lifestyle. If you need to have a smartphone because of certain apps, there are ways to dumb it down and make it quieter. But yeah, if you're on this journey too, please let me know how it's going.